Well, tonight it's not business as usual. We are now moving into the next segment, which is our discussion of the night, and we're talking about the state of the nation. Mark Bichachi, a communication strategist, will be joining us live to have a discussion on the state of the nation, everything that is taking center stage in the country at the moment. I believe Bichachi has already joined us. Good evening. Mark Bichachi. I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Good.
Good to see you. Now, let's just get right into it. Bichachi, I want us to delve into matters in the Jubilee Party. We have witnessed so many wrangles emerging from the embattled, allow me to call him embattled Secretary General, that is Jeremiah Kioni, and the Iyala Member of Parliament, Kanini Kega, who are all claiming the Secretary General seat. And this is not only the wrangles that are being experienced in that particular party, the one's ruling party. Now, what do you think is the root cause of the Jubilee Party wrangles?
Well, the root cause is quite clear because it's a matter of public record. Number one is that the MPs, 28 odd of them, feel that the Jubilee Party should join the Kenya Kwanza Alliance, and they went to State House to cement this particular deal. Now, of course, the Secretary General Kioni, the party leader Uhuru Kenyatta, the Deputy Chair Murathe, among others, feel as though they still made the right choice and want to stick in Azimio. And therefore, this is an issue where the Azimio coalition is being hemorrhaged of its support within the Jubilee Party. So it is not really wrangles between Kioni and Kanini Kega. That is simply the facade of it. The truth is this is a fight for the democratic space in this country. It is a question of whether a ruling party can invade a coalition and dismantle that coalition from within. So the implications of this will be far more reaching than just the fate of Jubilee Party. This is a question of how multi-party democracy is actually practiced in this country and whether it will stand the test of time.
Right now, we have seen President Uhuru Kenyatta intervene to try and kind of reclaim his position as the party leader. How does this concern him as a former head of state who has ruled the country for 2 full terms?
Well, you know, in this country, we have a very weird way of looking at things, that retirement from presidency is equal to retirement from politics. I find that logic quite hard to understand. Let's look at it this way. Barack Obama campaigned for Joe Biden 4 years after he had left the presidency. We did not hear Americans complain. Bill Clinton has severally campaigned for Democratic candidates, including his wife, including Barack Obama, and even Biden. It is only in Kenya that we want to take past presidents the same way we take rubbish that we want to throw it away in the bin. I think President Kenyatta has taken the view that he still has much to contribute. The African continent recently recognized his contribution. He also has been involved in peacemaking projects. I'm reminded of the nation of Ghana, where John Kufuor and other presidents who were there before continued to be active to date. Why? Because you need to use a Swahili saying, kwenye wazee haparibikangi jambo. So I don't know why Kenyans are obsessed that a former president and retired people should not participate in the political discourse. In fact, that is unconstitutional. Be that as it may, there are many people who feel that Uhuru Kenyatta should retire and just let Kanini Kega and Sabina Chege do as they please. That is also their constitutional right to air their views. But I do not see how the rights of Kanini Kega and Sabina Chege should now or supersede the rights of Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right, now we have also seen that the Iyala Member of Parliament, Kanini Kega, has suspended a special national delegation convention that was called by former President Uhuru Kenyatta. In your own opinion, do you think it is right for the former head of state to convene an NDC for a political party?
Well, he's, like I said again, if you look at the constitution of Jubilee Party, which I invite everyone to look at, and not just of Jubilee Party, UDA as well, Ford Kenya as well, the leader of the political party that has the powers to constitute any meeting. So your question is a bit confusing to me because he did not retire from being leader of Jubilee Party. So your question implies as though he has done something wrong, and legally and constitutionally he has not. So I'm a bit perturbed at your question because as party leader, unless he has been ousted, which is still in debate, he has the right to call for any party organ to meet. In fact, he called for the National Executive Committee to meet, I think 2 Fridays ago. So this is a matter of conjecture, and I think Kenyans are looking at it more from a political angle, propaganda angle, than they are looking at it from a pragmatic angle. I don't find a reason, legally or politically speaking, that would make it wrong for a former president to call for a meeting, unless you, as you ask your question, you can find a reason for that. I don't know. Do you have a reason why he should not?
All right, who convenes a meeting for a political party? From your
I've just answered that whether it is for Kenya or it is UDA, if UDA wants to hold a meeting, and we've seen President William Ruto do so many times, he calls for the meeting because he is the party leader. Raila Odinga is a retired prime minister. He calls for DM party meetings. We've got Kalonzo Musyoka, Wiper party leader, former vice president. He calls for Wiper meetings. So why should the party leader of Jubilee not call for a meeting? And we know that the Jubilee Constitution agrees to this. I don't know whether you are aware of the Political Party Act and what party leaders can and can't do, because if that is what is at the fore, if you're asking me a legal question, then he can. If you're asking a party constitution question, then he can. If you're asking a constitutional question, whether he has the constitutional right to continue his political life and his political practice, then the answer is yes. The constitution does not bar any former anything from participating in their political position in any shape, way, form. In fact, to ask whether it is legal for him to hold a party meeting is to ask whether we are then withdrawing his constitutional freedoms just because he's a former president.
All right, now allow us to talk about a matter that is still hitting the headlines now, and that is the bipartisan talks between the Kenya Kwanza government and the opposition. Do you think that the opposition, the bipartisan talks between the government and the opposition, really are they a solution to the common mwananchi?
First and foremost, I am a supporter of talks. I've always supported talks. If you take, for example, the situation in the United States right now, where they're discussing the rising of the debt ceiling, you can see clearly it is a bipartisan approach. They're talking about it. They're talking about the budget of their country. They're talking about how they're going to meet real estate, and they're bargaining really about what priorities they need to put as a country to ensure that they move forward. So bipartisan talks are not just a Kenyan thing. They should be something that are across the world. Now, in Kenya, of course, we've given every good thing a bad name, and therefore talks always means nusu mkate, half government, and things like that. And I think that is really sad for the Kenyan people, because the people we voted for, the people we elected, represent us. That's what it is. So bipartisan talks should be something we support. Be that as it may, I think Raila Odinga and co have been snookered. I think that the president and the Kenya Kwanza function did a very simple calculation where they knew if they pulled the mandamano away, then their pressure to hold such discussions would no longer hold. So right now, Raila Odinga finds himself in a weaker position, given that he has one bullet, which is mandamano. He failed the mandamanos last Monday, failed to launch, and if he needs to go back, he's not going to have the same oomph and gusto that he had before. And therefore, whenever in any negotiation you lose your leverage, as Raila Odinga has, then leverage then swings to the government, to Kenya Kwanza, and Kenya Kwanza simply has to drag its feet. It has no obligation to meet the demands of Azimio simply because there is no mandamano. If there's no mandamano, honestly tell me, if you're William Ruto, why would you listen to Azimio? So this is, I think, if it was a chess game, then Azimio will have will be playing on the back foot unless Raila Odinga can pull out a hat trick and be able to go back to the streets.
Now, the opposition recently gave a 48-hour ultimatum for the government to engage them in these bipartisan talks, failure to which they will return to the streets. What does this mean for the country?
Well, what that means for the country is if Raila Odinga is able and Azimio is able to put together the demonstrations again, it would mean that there is at least one day in a week where commerce will not happen. At least that will also affect our international conferences, international businessmen coming into the country. It will also affect the attractiveness of investing into the country. So the ramifications of Mandamano are wide sweeping. They're economically speaking, and then they're also disruptive to the lives of Kenyans, because generally the tug of war between the police and the protesters makes moving around Nairobi difficult. So what that means is that then it would force the government to go to the negotiation table. But having spent the goodwill they had in terms of Azimio stopping the demonstrations, I am not sure whether the government complying will stop the demonstrations, because I think Azimio will choose now to have the demonstrations run parallel.
Bichachi, maybe you could explain to us how this current political situation right now, I understand there's tension, the country is waiting for the next move. How does this current political situation affect the flow of money within the economy?
Well, in terms of the flow of money, let's understand a few things. That number one, for Kenyans to pay taxes, businesses need to trade. So you can imagine every time town is locked down, for example, and the sales at a kiosk drop, soda sales drop. So if soda sales drop, that means the government is raising less VAT. If the government raises less value-added tax, then it also means that it is unable to meet its targets. Its targets then affect the development budget. So how many roads we are getting, how many medicines we're getting in our hospitals, how much chalk our teachers have to write on. So the ripple effect is that the economy slows down. When the economy slows down, there's less money for government to use. And then on the other side, when the economy slows down, so for example, if a businessman is used to having 24 days of working, and then suddenly you reduce those days by 4, then there's a percentage of revenue he has not received, and that percentage of revenue affects what he's able to buy, who he's able to hire, and how much labor is able to be procured. And less labor means less wages for people, and less wages for people means more poverty, especially at such a time where inflation is as high as it is. So demonstrations and the stoppage of business within the city of Nairobi does affect commerce, and it does affect the common mwananchi as well, not just the traders in Nairobi.
Now, the government has also introduced a new set of taxes just with more than 6 months' time in office. What would you say the government has achieved so far as reducing the cost of living is concerned?
What reducing the cost of living?
Yes.
I was at the supermarket the other day, and the cost of living has not reduced. It's gone up. What I think the government has achieved is it has slightly reduced the price of unga, I think to 180, but the cost of everything else is still high, and that's because the value of the dollar is still at above 130. That makes goods very expensive. They are 20 shillings more expensive than they were August of last year in terms of dollar terms. At the same time, the inflation has not stopped. So the cost of living remains high. I don't think the government has been able to stem that in a significant way. And the taxes that they are introducing will further make the cost of living more expensive. If they add another 8% tax on fuel, for example, that will affect every single sector of the economy. It will affect how much your milk, how much it costs to get to your door. It will affect electricity because of fuel adjustment. It will affect your transport costs going to work. So one, they've not been able to stem the cost of living. I think it has continued to rise. And these new tax measures will also mean that two things. It will mean that the cost of living will go higher, but it also means that you're taking a pay cut indirectly, because if you are paying more for the same goods, then your money has reduced. Also for civil servants being taxed on their per diem, I think is going to give them a big blow, because per diem traditionally was not taxed. Taxing it means that whatever earnings civil servants have been earning will now be further reduced.
All right, now as we wind up, Bichachi, still on the cost of living, an up to 16% levy has been introduced on fuel. Where does this position the economy now as we wind up?
Well, the economy now has to struggle, because increasing the cost of fuel also increases the cost of doing business. So it makes Kenya less attractive, because if you're going to think about logistics, so transportation costs are going up. If you're going to think about energy costs, they are also going up. So it will make investment less attractive in the country. Number two, it will make goods more expensive by and large. So that will also might also lead to a shrinkage in the economy, because if things are going to be that much more expensive, then people will be less likely to buy leisure goods. For one, will take a hit, and then two, even basic commodities. Instead of buying a half a kg of Blue Band, you will find people buying by the gram, meaning that businesses will also suffer seeing less sales. And if businesses see less sales, then employment will also be reduced. So it's going to be as the government has told us to do. It's time to tighten our belts, change your budgets, buy less, drink less, go out less. That's what you need to do. Hunker down and prepare for hard times.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much, Mark Bichachi, for making time for us tonight. We do appreciate you being here. All right. All right. That brings us to the end of our bulletin tonight. Many thanks indeed for keeping us company. Be sure to join me again next week, inshallah. Do have yourself a good night. My name is Anne Odida, and our sign language interpreter